Possession crucial from this. How much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it. It's over the bar. Oh, holy Moses.
Hello, welcome to the RTÉ GAA Podcast. Monday morning has rolled around and I'm joined as always by Rory O'Neill and by the lovely Anthony Daly. How are you doing, lads?
Great, Mikey.
It was an eventful weekend at hurling, but not as eventful as your failed trip to Cusack Park, Daly.
Oh yeah, Sunday. Oh, stop. Yeah, Mike. Oh God, like yeah. I'm obviously still 9 weeks more to go before I'm back on the road from after my knockout, as the tip lads would say, and so up doing the match Saturday night. Great atmosphere. Parnell. The match didn't live up to it, obviously, but train down anyway 10 o'clock out of Houston into the junction, which is kind of handy rather than going to Limerick City. But what I didn't know is we had to drop Orla back to college. She was in the car, so we had to go into Limerick City. Quick bite to eat, out to the tunnel. A lad in front of me trying to swipe his credit card. First of all, on the coin thing, I'd go out and give him €2, put it into the thing. We all want to go to the match. About a mile and a half past the tunnel anyway, or the toll bridge. Puncture. Should be simple enough, like for a grown man to be able to, but could not get the last nut off. Got 3 of them off, couldn't get the 4th one off. So eventually had to ring for a call out. And just before the call out fella came, a lovely lad, Declan McGoldrick from Kilkenny, pulled up and had it fixed. He had a real toolbox in the back of the car. So missed the park, missed the Sunday action. Thank God for TG Carr's delayed showing. I was able to sit down with a cup of tea and relax and watch it, Mike. But not the Sunday I was planning. Are
we blaming a mechanic and a pneumatic gun for having that nut on too tight, or do you just not realise your strength the last time you changed the tyre?
I definitely Zifa's car. I didn't change the tyre, so yeah, we're blaming some sort of automatic system of tightening those. Yeah, but I didn't have the right equipment with me anyway, Mike. That's one thing I knew. Yeah.
Well, look, you're just as well to miss out. Jeez, dark days for Clare. You can't even beat the whipping boys of Division 1, your neighbours.
Yeah, that's it. You say it like that, and look at it, all builds up for an epic with themselves in Offaly now, a repeat of '94, really, making lots of ways now to see who stays up. So
that's
just
true,
look like to everyone in our neighbours down the road there, and our neighbours in Offaly up the other side. So
I wonder will we get a sit in,
keen interest, like we're safe now, obviously ourselves. So we'll watch it with keen interest.
Let's put a strong referee on that one, Rory.
Oh, big time! Look, it'll be
with a good watch.
Yeah. It's in a funny way. At least there's a little bit of jeopardy. I mean, look, Offaly are going to be really up against it. But Liam, I think, was on with us last night and he was making the point, and it's not an unreasonable one to make. Like, you could argue the most interesting match on the last round, we'll say Waterford Kilkenny, but is probably Cork Wexford, because they don't meet that often, Cork and Wexford. But geez, they're both through now, which is an awful pity, because the game now will effectively become, you would imagine, a bit of a training match, really, like where both teams will probably put in, try lads out and give lads a run and that type of thing. So it is a pity in that there's nothing on the game. But but
his point on that, Rory, I think maybe a straight final. Then it'd be a massive match, wouldn't it?
Massive. Like, I mean, I would say Wexford Park would be close to full for that. It would be a fantastic. Yeah. Now, the one drawback from going to a straight final, I don't know if it's I think in the condensed calendar, maybe it's something that has to be considered. Look, in fairness, they did get rid of quarterfinals, and as we know, everything in the GAA in terms of change, it is a kind of an incremental thing. It's not generally done drastic and radical overnight, but maybe semi-finals are something that will eventually go as well if this particular format persists. But the only thing then is, I mean, you have 5 league games, then you have a final. Is that enough? Is that enough games? You've got to bear in mind, okay, the teams and the players might say yes, it is, but you have to bear in mind, like, I mean, you saw the crowd yesterday in Cusack Park in Ennis. You saw the crowd below in Walsh Park. You saw crowds like all over, like big crowds. Like there was a big crowd in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, even though I mightn't have looked at. Like, they're very valuable gate receipts for county boards this time of the year, and that's one particular drawback if you do decide to reduce the semi-finals out of it. But look, I suppose that's part of it.
It is a league, though. That's I often think, like, it's a league. Like,
yeah.
You can have your cup competition, which is obviously Ireland, but
I think
which is also a league.
I think the semi-finals are going. Like, I mean, there's probably a good chance you're looking at Kilkenny Waterford on one side. Now we know Cork Wexford are already through. Geez, they're going to be great semi-finals, you know. Now Dublin still have a good chance.
Yeah, Dublin still have a good chance now.
Good chance.
Waterford, depends on what.
But even if it is Dublin, it'll be they'll be brilliant semi-finals now.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Kilkenny and 3 teams who want to win the league.
yeah.
Was he 10 leagues won as a manager? Is he?
10.
Yeah.
Without ever seeming to be too bothered.
Be accused of that.
Nah, no, I know, I'm only joking. But sure, look, I was the only one here last week, Daly, who predicted a Kilkenny win. I said a beaten down Wexford Kerr will very, very rarely back against Kilkenny. And I actually think it's the sight of a Leinster opponent kind of gets Brian Cody's juices flowing and his team juices flowing. Because I don't think anybody.
I was predicting a Dubs win, Mike, and walked in to meet Ger Canning up in the commentary area, and he said, "Owen O'Donnell is out." And straight away, I thought,
yeah,
big shifter here. He's that powerful a man.
Yeah. But Jesus, they were. But that's I know, and we've written love letters to Owen O'Donnell here often enough on the podcast. But at the same time, that was a Kilkenny team, like rejuvenated is the headline on our website. Like that, they did seem to have found a bit of a spark. They also found, the bulk of their Ballyhale players, bar TJ, who's on his honeymoon, I believe. So that injection of fresh blood certainly gave them a bit of a kick.
Oh, they played very well, Mike. They really obliterated Dublin all around the field. Like Dublin never got a grip on the game, and that central axis, I probably referred to it in the commentary. Hugh Lawler rock solid, but Deegan sitting in the pocket, then nearly impossible for Ronan Hayes to find any space.
Blanchfield was, I know, and rightly so, you gave man of the match to Hugh Lawler, and he was outstanding. But I thought David Blanchfield was. Did he score 3 points from wing back?
3 points, yeah.
And the way he took him as well, Rory, he kind of looked up. Is there anything on? No, I'll have a cut. So, and Parnell, I suppose, being that little bit tighter, you've more license to shoot from the half-back line, I guess. But
he certainly feels like a Kilkenny wing back, can't he? He's got that ability. He's got the spring. He's just got the ridiculous bravery, like the kind of you kind of expect from a Kilkenny wing back when it comes to fielding the ball.
Wait till he fills out, Mike. He looks like he's a fair bit of bulk to get on yet. Like in Ginny Mackey, he's paced as well. Like I saw him chasing somebody there second half, and he made up the ground, which is it's grand having the size and the hand and the striking, but you need a bit of pace.
Yeah. No, he seems to have it all. I wanted to mention just the focus was on Limerick's third red card in their 4 league games thus far, understandably, of Aaron Gillan. But he wasn't the only one to be shown a red card this weekend. Obviously, there was Clare saw the line as well for persistent fouling Jack Brown. But I just saw the one in the Antrim Laois game, which should have been pivotal because it was in the 25th minute. Jack Kelly was sent off for a swipe. These are just stupid fouls people are doing when they know. Like, referees have been clamping down on this all spring, and with any luck, they'll clamp on. Like, you can't turn around and hit a guy a belt of a hurl after the whistle is gone with the referee standing in front of you. Like, it's just mindless.
You've got, if I remember correctly, he'd actually won he had been given the free.
Yeah, he'd won a free. Yeah.
The free.
He didn't like how he was fouled. It didn't look like there was much in it.
In a game where they really needed to win, they're at home. They've targeted it probably from the very, very start. But yeah, it was just daft. I think he'll know that himself. He definitely let himself down there, but you just won't get away with it now anymore. The sending's off, I think, across the board. Will Limerick be all that too worried? Aaron Gillan said it was a kind of I thought it was just a second yellow. And
did you? Jeez, I thought it was very. I thought it could have been. If he wasn't already on a yellow,
he didn't make any contact, but you could see that he
wasn't for one to try.
Yeah, no.
Second pull, but the ball was nearly got out into the river behind the
goal. Yeah. I'd say in a more general context, like I think the biggest worry from a Limerick perspective, I mean, I know Jack Brown was sent off as well, and probably from maybe a bit of lip and maybe persistent foul, and that was a silly one as well. Given Jack Brown and Jack Kelly, I think were particularly silly given the situations that both those teams found themselves in. Like from a Clare perspective, they had Limerick down to 14. It was about 8 or 9 minutes to go. Really good chance to go on and win it. you know, and now you've evened it up and you've given the ref the convenient task of making it 14 apiece.
It was later than that, Rory, I think.
Was it?
It was
about
injury time, I'm fairly sure.
Was
Mike,
it? Yeah, he played
I think it was later, yeah.
But he did play 6 or 7 minutes injury time, I think. But the worry from a Limerick perspective, the one thing, and Shane mentioned this, and it was Shane mentioned this last night, and it was also something that I've noticed as well. It's a lot of the time, it's forwards that have been sent off, like Peter Casey, Garrod, Seamus Flanagan, and now Aaron Gillan. And you would wonder from an opposition's perspective, like the defenders, generally speaking, I mean, Dalo, like you know this, defenders were generally the lads that usually got sent off for the late swipe or the dirty pull, right? So I'm just wondering, is there potentially the perception starting to drift out there that if you shake their tail or if you pull their tail a small bit here, are you likely to get a reaction? And if in this, like, I mean, if you go down to 14 players now, particularly going into championship and particularly in a game or in the kind of blockbuster nature of week after week, where you then be dealing with a suspension on top of it, I mean, it's 100%, I would imagine, something that Limerick are going to have to tidy up ahead of the 17th of April.
Yeah, they're kind of a tough, aggressive forward line, I'd say, Rory.
Yeah.
You know, it has really stood to them. You know what I mean? Obviously, they're going for the 4th All-Ireland in 5 years, so. But in that respect, they're hardy boys, like they're the kind of nearly old-fashioned backs.
Yeah.
You know, and there is that tendency to say, I'm standing up for myself here. And so everyone, when the spotlight is on you that much as it is on them, and how's Kinnerk doing it? What are they doing? What's the game plan? Is it just that they're the best players? Everyone is trying to come up with an angle to stop you, like, and they're being shared around as well. I don't mean there's one manager ringing another manager, but they're aping what they've seen in a previous game. So that tendency, and I think it's very unhelpful in their bid to do 3 in a row. I just think it's noise that they don't need. It's gone on. We all said after Garrod's one, Garrod Hegarty's one.
Like referees are human, Dalo, aren't they? So they're going to be reading and listening to all of this, and they're going to say, oh, Jesus, Limerick can be a bit flahoolic with the hurley or a bit flahoolic with this. The next thing, all of a sudden, you might get one where you don't actually deserve it at all.
Yeah, and that's the danger, and that is the danger. But we all said, Rory, the night in Limerick, that after Garrod's one, that probably the best thing that ever happened. It'll just wise them all up to this now. But look,
then follow week in Cork.
Shamey gets one, and then Aaron gets one yesterday, and I thought it was fully deserved, Rory. Right. I mean, he probably was being held, right? But you again, a bit like the dunt. You don't respond to the dunt with a swipe of a hurley. Do you know? So for me, that's just.
Would it be fair to say that 40 minutes in Conor Cleary's company would try any man's patience, Dale? Would that be a fair thing to say?
Playing well, Conor. He's done good. He's really solidified number 3 for Clare, and with John Conlon back at number 6 now, and seems to, what a game he played. He
played really well yesterday.
Like for Brian Lohan, I think this is massive wake up Monday time, saying, God, like 3 and 6 now, and even David McInerney back to what we think is his form. David Fitzgerald. We know these fellas are capable of this, Mike, and we saw it yesterday, I think, for the first time in a while, and very encouraging from a Clare point of view. There was a good buzz, even down here last night in the bar. People were coming back from the game, and they were, saying, "Geez, great to see it. We're set up now for the championship." And where everyone had Clare bottom of the power ranking in Munster, maybe there's a bit of a rethink on that now.
Possibly. The fact he didn't answer my question about Conor Cleary pretty much answers it.
No, look, he's tight marker. He's your all the fullbacks now.
Of course he is. He's exactly what you want. It was a compliment I was looking for, not an insult, put it that way.
No, great stuff, Mike.
Yeah. Look, Rory's been mentioned a few times now, and like at this point, like Limerick are without a win. Okay, they got a draw in the home of their nearest neighbours, which isn't a bad result, but it's not a win. Even if they beat Offaly in the next day, which they're likely to do, they have 4 weeks off. And then it's Cork away, Waterford home, Tip at home, Clare away, with 1 week off in the middle there. Like this, you're putting a lot of faith in training games here, and I know they tried to blood a lot of players, and there's a balancing act between the two things. But like John Kiley's now saying, we're focusing on the championship, and that is a funny thing for him to say.
It's probably all he can do. At this stage, I think they have no choice, really. They look.
Oh yeah, no, it's obviously logical, but for him to actually say it, you know what I mean?
But with all due respect, they will beat Offaly. And then they're basically, it's just heads down then and just try and get ready for championship from there. But when we started at the very beginning of the year with the podcasts, Jackie was on with us, if you remember, Mikey, and I was saying, look, do I see the gap to Limerick being as insurmountable as the gap was to Jackie's great Kilkenny team at the beginning of the year? Do you remember that? And I said I didn't. And there was a few reasons in my head for that. The first thing was, I think by and large, and we saw a little bit of it last night as well, with Shane making the point in and around Dublin, but I don't think Limerick are actually too dissimilar either. They found one or two, Cathal O'Neill and Colin Coughlin, fair enough. But if you looked at the Limerick team that took to the field in the 2017 qualifier against Kilkenny, which was John Kiley's first year in charge, I think I was looking at it there this morning. There's 11 of the starting 15 that will probably take to the field in the first round of the championship against Cork. Now, that's only 5 years ago, but 5 years in intercounty hurling is an awful long time now. So it's the same players by and large. Fantastic players. Absolutely. Some of the best, right? The other side of it then is the kind of game that they play is a very abrasive and it's a very physical game. That takes its toll. It takes its toll mentally and it takes its toll physically. I would still make them not hot favourites, but I'd still make them favourites to win the All-Ireland. Where I felt that teams might close the gap is that just a little bit of wear and tear, with a little bit of wear and tear upstairs and a little bit of wear and tear on the body, will allow teams to get it that little bit closer. I think we saw certainly yesterday in Waterford, one of those teams. I think Cork could probably get up to that level as well. I think the really interesting thing for everybody is I think their form has probably blown the hurling championship a little bit more open than what we all originally thought. I think we're in for a fantastic championship as a result. And I think Munster's going to be a bloodbath. I mean, it's just like Munster. I mean, like you pick 3 teams that are going to come out of Munster now, it's just, I think what it does, their form has actually opened the door, created a little glint of light for everybody else. I would still back them to turn it around because I think they have shown it in the past. And there's a lot of really strong characters in that dressing room. But it is hard. It is hard to keep going to the well over and over. You have to remember, they could be going for 5 in a row had they not had a bit of a bum start against Kilkenny in the 2019
or an umpire had spotted a touch of the Kilkenny hurl.
So this is how long these guys have been on the go now. And I know a lot of them are still very, very young, but they have a lot of hurling done. And you saw what happened with Dublin last year. Sometimes the engine can just start to seize at a time when you least expect it.
Yeah, there was a talk about how many players they were, looking at. But you look at the team that was put out there in Cusack Park, it was pretty, it was close to as strong as it could be, I suppose. A couple of notable absentees, but it was a very strong team. Kyle Hayes wasn't there, obviously, and Peter Casey's missing. But it's a strong team, and it just got me thinking that certain teams do try and blood new players in the league. Tipperary are an obvious example, and Kilkenny have used 29. And then others don't. Obviously, it's quite clear that Dublin and Wexford are trying to, kind of hone the team that they have and maybe the first 20 or 21 players, and they're not too worried beyond that. Both are kind of fraught with danger. You might find one or two, obviously, if you spread the net wide, or you could be like Limerick, where you're back to your core team before you're in your penultimate game. And then the risk for Dublin and Wexford is obvious as well, that, one or two key players go down in the first round of the championship and you're scratching around a bit.
Yeah, it's a hard enough one, Mike, and I suppose that's the beauty of where John Kiley is coming from, in that he's everything bagged in terms of a manager and very little pressure on them on the sideline, so he can. But you would say that not too many. Cathal O'Neill, I would say, has maybe grown into this type player. We're just studying him yesterday on TV now. I think he's really getting on the physical stakes. He's really settling into it. Colin Coughlin, yes, and huge potential. Will he get his place in front of a Kyle Hayes there? So much competition in that back line. It's very difficult. O'Neill, I think missing Peter Casey, Mike, is a key thing for them. He's sort of the corner forward that comes out to kind of centre forward, and the centre forward goes Roman Keane, obviously. And very hard to replace a guy of Peter Casey's hurling brain.
He's got that magic, hasn't he?
Hurling brain as well, Rory. He's a ferocious hurling brain. Like, he sees things that other lads. I've seen him since he was 17. He's a ferocious hurling brain, and see, he wouldn't have been that heralded, like, you know. But the role he was playing, you see, is crucial to the overall. So that's the one thing it's hurting him. And you're right. Then you'd be saying Matty Kenny got a fit of bringing on subs when they were 10 points down Saturday night, and you're saying, why? Well, maybe he's right, because he needs to have a look. But is it late now to be having a look? No, they're probably
it's a little unfair on them, isn't it? You know.
Yeah, but like, look, if you were Dublin though as well, you see Matty's in his 4th year. Nothing's been won bar the Walsh Cup. You're under pressure to try and maybe get to a league final, or really know what your best 15/18 is for the Laois game in the championship. And it's different strokes for different folks. Like, you know, Clare have done a fair bit of experimenting, and most of it was forced on Brian, you know, because he was missing lads. And funnily enough, Shane Meehan now seems to be a regular. Like, you know, we all knew the potential of Shane Meehan. Yeah. So that's it. Look,
Where was Mark Rogers? Where was Mark Rogers yesterday?
Hurt his knee in the Fitzgibbon semi-final for UL in extra time, Rory.
He was a bit of a find. How bad is that injury?
Rogers would be more heralded than Meehan even, you know. He was
how bad is the injury? How bad is the injury?
I think he'd be out for about 4 weeks. So would have him. He won't play against Galway, I'd say, but he'd be right for championship is what the talk on the ground is. But yeah, you could do with him more playing. And all of a sudden, Clare seemed to have options because of this. Patrick Crotty and Shanahan didn't come on yesterday, and he came on against Offaly, made the difference. So it's amazing how when it's thrown at you like that. Colin Bonner, different ball game. He had to come in and start spinning guys in and out and having.
Crotty's great, Dalo. I love a fella with the socks up. I think. It's real old school, like
he's Kilkenny blood in him.
A few scars in the back of my head from his old lad and his uncles and all that back in the 90s. They were tough, scarf tough. But yeah, he's a real, you know, throwback in these, go for everything, and it's great. It's been great. Robin Mounsey, fellas like that, if you ask me to start of the year, would these guys be starting in league games and, you know, playing against Limerick and getting a draw? Not a hope, I'd say. So it's amazing, you know, give them their head and let them at it, and maybe might be the way to go. We
were talking about Waterford in that respect, Rory, last week, just about how the amount of injuries they've had over the last few years means that, particularly in the backs, you know, they've almost got a backline of people who played centre back at some point in the last couple of seasons, and it's showing. They weren't quite as tight as you might have expected in the first half against Tipperary, but the second half, I was busy. My wife was working yesterday, so I was minding a lot of children yesterday, so I was catching snatches of hurling where I could. And unfortunately, the bit I caught was the second half of Waterford and Tipperary, which it wasn't a half of hurling to get yesterday, Rory, I don't think. But Waterford, when they switch gears, mother of God.
Yeah, that's exactly the phrase, when they switched gears. Like, I watched this one really closely because I'm fascinated by Waterford for a few reasons. You know, I'd have a good feeling about them. I think they've got all the right pieces in place now. They've got a very good panel. They have a fantastic management team. I think their conditioning is tops. I mean, the hits they were putting in yesterday and they were giving and taking. You know, like, they've obviously spent a lot of time in the gym, I would say, over the last 6-7 months. And for the first 10 or 15 minutes, they kind of spluttered and stuttered their way, you know, and Tip actually got a good foothold in the game. Like, Tip were 9-3 or 9-4 up after about, and within the blink of an eye, the game was the level. And Waterford just decided, bang, next thing, Stephen Bennett.
1-6 without reply, I think, was it?
Got 1-6 without reply. And after that, effectively, the game's contest was over. And, like, you know, the quality of their play, they still have Jamie Barron and maybe one or two more to come back in. Don't know what the story is.
One or two more.
Barron. Yeah.
Austin Gleeson, Desi Hutchinson.
Yeah, Austin Gleeson, Desi Hutchinson, Jamie
Callum
Barron.
Lyons.
Yeah, Callum Lyons. I mean,
poor Manny.
Yeah, like to me, I would say that's a very, very happy camp. And they gave Tipperary a bit of a chastening experience there now yesterday, like a 10-point win. It was, again, massive crowd, really good atmosphere. And as you said, Mikey, once they just decided to move up to 4th and 5th gear, Tipperary just couldn't live with them. And I think a lot of teams will struggle to live with Waterford. I think they are in they're in a very, very good place.
I was singing the defense's praises last week, Dale, but I think we'd be kind of foolish not so far in the league. 215, 731, 321, and 128, and that's without Desi Hutchinson, that's with maybe 2/3 of their championship starting six, you might think.
Yeah, and look, there's no player in the country. I suppose we'd have to include a couple of your forwards, Mike, Rory O'Connor.
Yeah.
But Stephen Bennett is just on fire at the moment.
Nearly unremarkable.
116 he ended up with in total. Was
17, no?
170.
Jeez, you wouldn't get it in 4 games. Delighted with yourself. You divided up to 4 games.
If he's in your fantasy team, you're flying it this week.
Problem is, he's Lander's captain. He's all on our team. I'm Jason Ford. He's going to win the whole competition. Oh, Rory, never mind. Our section of it. He's second in the overall. Stop. But no, look. Even yesterday, Jack Prendergast's display, he talk about growing into it. The 2 Dalys.
Yeah, Irla was outstanding.
Yeah, Tig back at centre back. Then,
really starting to kind of find his feet now as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
you're saying,
he slept well.
There's my centre back. I've probably one of the best fullbacks in the country. The competition around them is they're going to have 5 subs to bring on that no one are going to have to bring on. That's the bottom line. They're going to have the best 20 ahead of Limerick. No. Yeah. They haven't won the All Ireland since +59, so that's going to be the question.
Psychological hurdle for them.
Can you get over that? But
yeah,
they definitely have the squad to do it.
Without a doubt, and they're they've kind of probably balanced it, Rory, well enough. The kind of getting a run of form, they're going to make the semi-finals more than likely, and kind of giving players a run because they've been in that kind of unfortunate position where the Ballygunner contingent were gone at least. So he couldn't have played his first choice championship team if he wanted to, but I don't know why Tig de Burka wasn't in, or Austin Gleeson wasn't in the squad yesterday. Was he just rested, or maybe he had a tweak or something? But he's not being forced to play Tig de Burka, and Austin Gleeson, keep saying that, and he won't. Liam Gall is happy enough that he's got players to use, and he's got a lot of faith in probably his wider panel as well.
He's an embarrassment of riches in comparison to an awful lot of teams, and I think the key thing, to my mind, hurling ability wise, they're up there with absolutely everybody, probably surpassed. There was always a kind of a swashbuckling style to Waterford hurling that, made them always very attractive. They were nearly everybody's second favourite team. If you go back to the Justin and the Ken McGrath era, they were certainly my second favourite team. Even though they broke my heart plenty of times. But, I think, and there's a kind of a street hurling kind of a style to Waterford that's just, it's very attractive to watch. And I think they're going to go into this championship now, I think, with all the requisite tools. The one big hurdle, I think, Dalo just mentioned it, is that, the higher up the mountain you get, the thinner the air becomes, and just those final few steps, that psychological burden to be that team that finally gets over the line. Will a league title propel them on to do that? Confidence. There's plenty of lads in that panel that probably have league medals already, so I'm not entirely sure how much stock or store Liam Cahill might put in that. I think certainly a Munster Championship, and then obviously the big one would be far more the kind of targets that he'll have in mind heading into the championship.
He might win it, Rory. He might win it without going flat out even.
Yeah, to me, they are a fascinating story and a fascinating subplot, and they're going to be, they're going to take a lot of stopping.
We'll finish up now shortly. We'll finish up with hurling now shortly. We mentioned the Camogie. So we'll finish with Wexford, Dale, because I know you're dying to talk about Rory O'Connor. I think every time we have you on, you're writing love poems to him, as you should do, because he's marvellous. He got 111 then again yesterday, and it seemed, I wanted to mention this, but it seems like kind of obvious thing to say that living in this era of Stephen Bennett's and Patrick Horgan's and Tony Kelly's and Rory O'Connor's, we've mentioned it a few times, you can kind of almost take it for granted when a lad scores 111 because up the road in Walsh Park, a guy scored 117, and it's just like 111 in a game of hurling in a game of inter-county hurling is like ludicrous, and he's not even the regular free taker, and he was put on him and he did a good job of it. Like there's lads out there now, and they're just, I know most of them are the established free takers, which is probably putting on 70% of their scores, but these tallies people are getting now at the moment, it's just astonishing.
And he wasn't even, his brother Jack was taking the frees. His brother or cousin, Jack and himself.
They're brothers.
Jack was hitting the frees early on in the league. Like
he was, yeah. Rory was taking him yesterday. He got 9 frees. One of that, nine of his points were frees yesterday.
But I watched him in Ennis now against Clare. He was electric. Like he was virtually unmarkable. Now, the movement, the pace, and then the strength as well, and then the structure changed slightly. I think as well. You'd have to say, like Davy played a certain game. It nearly brought them to the top of the mountain. Let's face it. And there's so many benefits that they're taking from that now at the moment. Dara's building on that, but tweaking it his own way. And I think a couple of their forwards are benefiting from that tweaking. He's certainly won that. And I know he had a scatter of injuries under Davy as well. And probably can get a chance to show off his best. So he really looks to be the guy now who's for Wexford as well. You have to realise that their marquee guy is missing, and won't be back to championship in Lee Chin. So for another, see, this is one of the things about the guy being missing, enforced. Because you're not resting him. The other lads have to stand up, and we all know how good Rory O'Connor potentially was, but now he's had to take on that leadership mantle as well, and I think he's thriving in it. And you still know Chin will come back and be savagely effective. So for Darry Egan, it's a win-win.
And they're starting to mature as well. I think that themselves and Waterford, I think, they're all at a very good age now as well, Dalo, in that they're all hitting their mid-20s. In a sort of a hurling context, I would imagine that's kind of, you're heading into your peak years now, physically, mentally. I would imagine there's a good setup there. They kind of, they know where they're at now in terms of, inter-county hurling and what's required to compete and to win at the very highest level. There's a maturity in their play, their approach, everything. So, yeah, as we were saying, if Cork and Wexford had something on it, geez, it'd be some crackdown in Wexford Park in 2 weeks' time, And
just on that as well, Mike, just on the game, I think we'd have to give a mention for Offaly, who find it hard, but are steadily improving. And only one goal conceded this weekend now, whereas the goals were going in.
That's 2 weeks in a row where they've had the opponent sweating with 40, 50 minutes on the clock.
Do you know what's very noticeable, Dalo, right? And again, look, I mean, none of us know. Well, certainly I don't, and maybe Mikey, you do. I don't know, but what we would know about conditioning and just the sort of physical fitness.
It's nice for you to say it, Rory, but don't.
Yeah, right. But I wouldn't have the first Bulls.
And I've forgotten.
Yeah, right. But they do seem to start games well. They stay in there in half time, and then there's a kind of a 20-25 minute fade out towards the back end. Is that basically just, you need a kind of a body and a bulk of work done to be able to sustain it for the 70-80 minutes?
Definitely. It is. And it's a different level. What you got away with last year coming up from 2A.
And that takes time to build that score up, doesn't it? Yeah.
And he's basically going young enough as well, Mike Finlay, and he'll stop. But I think they're coming together. They're getting used to it, and Antrim will be bitterly disappointed with the way yesterday went, because dominated the play and just missed a few crucial chances down the stretch, and they look like now they're nailed on to meet Offaly. And how massive a game will that be? But then, of course, you're looking ahead to the Joe McDonagh, so it's fascinating down the levels as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
No one wants to go back down to 2A. Right, so that's a massive game, but is the Joe McDonagh game going to be a bigger game when they meet? Could be the final again of it. Not dismissing anyone else. There's a lot of teams going well. Notably down, I would say, what a victory in Mullingar yesterday for them as well.
Kerry are fine.
Yeah, it's and Kerry, but the Mighty Boys just back in now as well. So it's that'll be fascinating as well. But that league playoff, which looks likely to occur, we obviously they have a round each to go. But Offaly, I think beginning to learn to live with it.
Yeah, but whether they get a chance to live with it again next year, now it will be a very interesting game. Unfortunately, relegation playoffs are always fascinating because it's real skin and hair stuff, and it's right. Rory, the club Camogie final took place again Poor old Owlers. Their reign was, I think, what was it, 10 weeks. They had the misfortune of coming up against the team they beat in the 2020 final. In 2021, it all gets a bit confusing. But either way, look, Sarsfields of Galway won out in a fairly high score. Well, 3-12 to 4-5. As we were saying before we came on here, it's very difficult to, when the team has revenge on their mind. If you're not at 100%, you're gonna have a hard day of it, aren't you?
Yeah, and from the very off, SARS just seemed to be very switched in. I mean, I know the scoreline was a 3 or 4 points in the end. Probably not a fair reflection. And in fairness to Colin Sunderland afterwards, the All Art manager, he mentioned as much. Unless he's got a late goal, really, that was kind of consolation stuff, and maybe made a small bit of a liar out of the scoreboard. In that, you know, I think SARS were very well worth their win over the 60 to 65, 66 minutes. The McGrath sisters just ran the show. Orla from centre forward, I thought was absolutely outstanding. I know. Is it Siobhan who was playing full forward who got the one? She ended up at 1-7 or 1-6 or something. Probably grabbed a lot of the headlines, but I just thought Orla was absolutely outstanding. They were just on it from the very get-go. They got themselves into a fairly comfortable lead from early on, from which they never really looked back. Oulart couldn't they were playing Ursula and Una inside, like kind of a two-player full forward line. Didn't really get enough ball into them, and
Una Lacey did score 2 goals, which by her standards is probably not that many, but she still got 2 goals in All-Ireland final.
But they just couldn't really get their hands on enough ball around the middle to sort of get that better supply line in, and you couldn't take anything away from SARS, and very, very well deserving winners on the day, and fair play. And like, it's amazing actually. One household can effectively do.
I was about to say, Daly, it's amazing, isn't it? Hopper, his 4 daughters. There's something about these goals. Like Thomas's, of course, are famously made up of about 90% Burks, etc. But there's something remarkable when a team is just so not reliant. That's not fair, but is so inspired by one family. And as we always say in the GA, the conversations around the kitchen table, etc., etc. But it must have been remarkable in their house yesterday morning, you'd think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and probably the house party tonight when the pubs finally closed down in New Inn and Bull on could be good in the McGraths, I'd say. Look, sure, yeah. Hopper was a great player, great leader, warrior. Like, he'd take you on. We're on about forwards getting tougher now. Hopper had a fair bit of what they had.
Did you mark him? Did you ever mark him?
Oh yeah. Good few times. And club, we used to always play him in the club, and I had a brief involvement with him there last year. I just couldn't commit to it, unfortunately. But you know, it's a special club, lads. The facilities, and it's two, as he said last night, 2 national schools, big rural kind of parish, but they're a special club. There's no doubt about that. And Hopper might have been dying for the boy at one stage to come out, a bit like myself, but you'll be glad of him as well when you see him growing up and producing. My ladies now will hardly make it to Crow Park. They might get there for the set dancing or something, but no, they're great players, aren't they? They're just brilliant players, and they're outstanding. And tough on Oulart as well. Very hard to beat a team that's probably every bit as good as you. Again, in a massive match. Again, what was it, 76 days later? 2 great teams. Ursula will be a bit sore this morning, but sure, look, they've had great careers as well. Like, haven't they?
Brilliant career,
phenomenal county and club. Like,
I guess players. The fear there, Rory, is that there's a fair few miles on the clock. Those Irish players were probably hanging around to try and do the 2 in a row, and they owe nobody nothing. But you wonder if a few of them might hang up the hurls now.
Yeah, it's a pity in one sense, in that there was kind of a little bit of a mini rivalry starting to develop between themselves, SARS and Schlockneil. Schlockneil had done 3 in a row before being dethroned by Sarsfields, and then Oulart went and beat Sarsfields, and now SARS have turned the tables on them. And you would imagine Schlockneil will come storming back into it, because they were obviously in the semi-final. But what you would hope, against hope, is that what happened to Wexford Camogie at intercounty level doesn't happen to Oulart, you know, in that they just sort of fall off a map completely. And I don't think they will, because I think I wouldn't be very familiar with that neck of the woods, but from what Ursula tells me and from what people from down that neck of the woods would say is like we were just mentioning earlier, but like they'd use the hurleys to spoon the cornflakes in on
basically,
yeah. I mean, it's a way of life. So I wouldn't, it'll probably mean a change in the guard and they might have to rebuild again, but I wouldn't exactly see them being down too long.
No. All right. Well, we'll let you head off now.
He's getting away without talking about Cork, Mike.
What?
Yeah.
He's getting away.
You have to keep it quiet. Yeah.
No,
top of the table.
Can't talk about it. We did mention in relation to themselves and Wexford having a nothing match in a couple of weeks. So look, we'll talk about it now when we get to the Wexford Cork League final. Now we'll devote a show to that. They'll let you go in and do some bench pressing so you're able to change it, to get the nut off your wheel the next time you need to. And Rory, we'll see you on Thursday for a football preview
we
show.
Look forward to the football.
Exactly. Thanks everybody. See you
Cheers,
later.
guys.
Bye.
From this, how much longer will the referee allow? Dublin lead by a point, and there's the whistle. It's over.
We earned it by winning the last 2 matches on the road, and that's not going to be taken away from us.
But what I love in hurling, I love players that will never give in.
He hits it.